Beneath the facade of a perfect life lies a web of deceit that shatters the tranquility of a small town. When the privileged Felton family is torn apart by a forbidden affair, the ensuing violence reveals hidden betrayals and dark secrets. As accusations of murder and manipulation unfold, one detective uncovers a shocking truth about a deadly plan that was years in the making. Discover the chilling story of love, betrayal, and the tragic price of deception in the Felton scandal. A web of lies and murder. Anna Brooks was a rising star in corporate law when she first met Mark Davis at a charity gala in Rivertown. At 28, Anna was ambitious, intelligent, and strikingly beautiful. Mark, 15 years her senior, was immediately captivated. As the CEO of a successful manufacturing firm, Mark exuded power and confidence. His graying hair and sharp suits spoke of wealth and influence, qualities Anna found irresistible. Their romance was a whirlwind of opulent dinners, weekend getaways, and extravagant gifts. Mark lavished Anna with the kind of attention and luxury she had always dreamed of, but never experienced in her modest upbringing. Within 6 months, he proposed with a diamond ring so large it could have paid off her student loans twice over. Their wedding was the social event of the season in Riverwood, where Mark had recently relocated his company headquarters. Anna walked down the aisle of the town's historic chapel, glowing in a designer gown, her face a picture of joy and love. Little did they know, their fairy tale was about to unravel. The first year of marriage seemed perfect on the surface. Anna left her job in the city to become the ideal society wife, throwing herself into charity work and social events. But behind closed doors, cracks began to show. Mark's initially well-intentioned protectiveness soon turned into suffocating control. He questioned her every move, criticized her choices, and gradually isolated her from her old friends and colleagues. Anna felt trapped in a gilded cage, her vibrant personality dimming under the weight of Mark's expectations. She tried to revive her legal career, but Mark was adamant that his wife should not work. Their arguments became more frequent, and their silences grew longer. As the years passed, the Davises maintained a facade of marital bliss for public view. They hosted lavish dinner parties, attended every important social event, and generously donated to local causes. Yet, those closest to them noticed the strain. Anna's smiles no longer reached her eyes, and Mark's possessive hand on her waist seemed more like a shackle than a loving gesture. By their 5th anniversary, the love that once burned so brightly had turned to cold ashes. They slept in separate bedrooms, and their conversations were reduced to brief exchanges about household matters and social obligations. It was into this atmosphere of quiet desperation that Jake Davis would arrive, unknowingly setting off a chain of events that would lead to tragedy. The summer of 2017 brought an unexpected change to the Davis household. Jake, Mark's 18-year-old son from his first marriage, arrived in Riverwood with little more than a duffel bag and a rebellious attitude. Standing at 6 feet tall and handsome, Jake's childhood had been marked by his parents' bitter divorce when he was just 5 years old. His mother, Laura, had struggled to raise him alone, leaving Mark to gain full custody. However, Mark's demanding career meant that Jake was primarily raised by a series of nannies in boarding schools. The result was a young man who felt abandoned by both parents, harboring a deep-seated resentment towards his father after a tumultuous freshman year at college marked by academic probation and a stint in rehab. For alcohol abuse, Jake had been given an ultimatum by Mark: come home, work for Felton his company, and get his life together, or be cut off entirely with few options, and even less enthusiasm. Jake had grudgingly agreed. Anna's first encounter with her stepson was awkward at best. She had met him briefly at the wedding 5 years prior. But the sullen 14-year-old had transformed into a strikingly handsome young man. For his part, Jake was taken aback by Anna's youth and beauty. Having expected someone closer to his father's age, Mark wasted no time in putting Jake to work in assisting him start at the bottom of the company ladder. This meant long hours at the factory learning every aspect of the business from the ground up. It was a punishing schedule designed to instill discipline, but it only served to deepen the rift between father and son. As the weeks passed, Anna found herself increasingly drawn to Jake's presence. In the house, his youthful energy and rebellious spirit were a stark contrast to the stifling atmosphere she had grown accustomed to. She began to look forward to their brief interaction. A shared laugh over breakfast, a sympathetic smile when Mark was being particularly demanding. Little did any of them realize that Jake's arrival had set the stage for a dangerous attraction that would soon spiral out of control, threatening to destroy the fragile balance of the Felton family forever. The catalyst for Anna and Jake's illicit relationship came on a sweltering August night. Mark was away on a business trip, leaving Anna alone in the vast empty house, unable to sleep in the impressive heat. She had gone downstairs for a glass of water, only to find Jake in the kitchen, shirtless and glistening with sweat after a late night run. Their eyes met, and in that moment something shifted. The air between them crackled with unspoken tension. Anna found herself mesmerized by the defined muscles of his chest, the vulnerable look in his eyes. So unlike his father's hard gaze, Jake in turn was struck by Anna's beauty, her silk nightgown clinging to her curves. In the humid air they talked for hours that night, sharing confidences they had never dared voice before. Anna spoke of her frustrations with Mark, her feelings of being trapped and unfulfilled. Jake opened up about his troubled relationship with his father, his struggles with addiction, and his dreams of breaking free from the Felton legacy. As dawn broke, they found themselves drawn together, their lips meeting in a kiss that was equal parts passion and desperation. It was a moment of weakness that would have far-reaching consequences in the days that followed. Anna and Jake tried to forget what had happened, to chalk it up to a moment of madness, but the attraction between them had been unleashed, and it proved impossible to ignore. Stolen glances across the dinner table, lingering touches as they passed in the hallway. Every interaction was charged with forbidden desire. Their first real tryst occurred 2 weeks later. Mark had fallen asleep early, as he often did after drinking too much scotch. Anna slipped out of their bedroom and made her way to the pool house, where Jake had taken up residence. Under the cover of darkness, they gave in to their passion. Their love-making was urgent and frantic, both acutely aware of the enormous risk they were taking. As the affair deepened, so did their emotional connection. Anna rediscovered parts of herself she thought long buried: her wit, her adventurous spirit, her capacity for joy. Jake, for his part, found in Anna the love and acceptance he had always craved. They began to imagine a future together, away from Mark's controlling influence and the suffocating expectations of society. But reality had a way of intruding on their fantasies. The guilt weighed heavily on both of them, particularly Anna. She was acutely aware of the betrayal, not just of her marriage vows, but of the trust Mark had placed in her as a stepmother to his son, Jake. Jake struggled with his own conflicting emotions, the thrill of the affair warring with his complicated feelings towards his father. Despite the risks, they found it impossible to end their relationship. They began to take greater chances, meeting in secluded spots around town, exchanging passionate emails, and even sneaking away for a weekend trip under the guise of Anna visiting an old college friend. As autumn approached, their affair had become all-consuming. Anna walked a constant tightrope, playing the role of devoted wife while secretly planning rendezvous with Jake. She knew what they were doing was dangerous and potentially ruinous for all involved. But in Jake's arms, she felt alive for the first time in years. Neither Anna nor Jake could have foreseen the tragic turn their secret passion would take. As they continued to weave their web of lies and stolen moments, the stage was set for a confrontation that would shatter the carefully constructed facade of the Davis family and leave an indelible mark on the town of Fairview. As summer faded into fall, Anna Davis found herself caught in an increasingly complex web of deceit. By day, she maintained her role as the perfect society wife, attending charity lunches, hosting dinner parties, and standing dutifully by Mark's side at corporate events. But in stolen moments, Hidden from the prying eyes of Fairview's gossip-hungry residents, she was a woman transformed, alive with passion in the arms of her young lover. The strain of her double life began to take its toll. Anna lost weight, her appetite diminished by the constant stress of maintaining her secret. Dark circles appeared under her eyes, poorly concealed by expensive concealers. She jumped at unexpected noises, always fearing discovery. Jake too felt the pressure of their clandestine affair. His performance at work suffered as he spent more time thinking about Anna than focusing on his tasks. He became withdrawn, avoiding the company of his co-workers and the few friends he had made in town. His nights were spent either in secret rendezvous with Anna or lying awake, torn between exhilaration and guilt. Their need for each other grew increasingly reckless. They began to take greater risks, meeting in less discreet locations. Once, they narrowly avoided discovery when Mark unexpectedly returned home early from a business trip, forcing Jake to hide under the bed for hours until he left. Another time, a nosy neighbor nearly caught them in an embrace in the garden. The constant fear of exposure was matched only by the "Here's the next part" with the names replaced. The addictive thrill of their forbidden romance only intensified with each close call. Rather than serving as a warning, these narrow escapes fueled their passion further. They reveled in the excitement of secret codes, clandestine messages, and the elaborate plans required to steal even a few moments alone. Yet, beneath the surface, doubts began to creep in. Anna found herself questioning if she was truly in love with Jake or simply infatuated with the idea of escape he represented. Jake, for his part, grappled with conflicting feelings about his father. Despite years of resentment, he couldn't fully shake the guilt of betraying Mark in the most personal way possible. As autumn progressed, the weight of their secret became almost unbearable. Both Anna and Jake knew that something had to give. They couldn't continue living this double life indefinitely. But neither was prepared for the violent way their carefully constructed house of cards would come crashing down around them. As October arrived, bringing with it a chill in the air and the first hints of falling leaves, the atmosphere in the Reeves household grew increasingly tense. Mark, once content to bury himself in work and scotch, began to notice the subtle changes in his wife and son. His suspicions deepened as he observed Anna's sudden interest in her appearance, her new clothes, and her increased time at the salon. Jake, usually sullen and argumentative, had become almost docile, agreeing to work overtime without complaint, and even joining Mark for the occasional drink after work. The turning point came when Mark overheard a snippet of conversation between two of his employees at the factory. They fell silent as he approached, but not before he caught mention of Jake's name and something about the boss's wife. The seed of doubt, once planted, began to grow rapidly. Mark's behavior shifted subtly but noticeably. He began coming home from work at unpredictable hours, his eyes narrowed with suspicion as he surveyed the house. He asked probing questions about Anna's daily activities and Jake's whereabouts, his tone casual but his gaze intense. In town, whispers began to circulate. Sharp-eyed neighbors noticed Anna's car parked near the lake at odd hours, and Jake slipping out of the house late at night. Anna and Jake, caught up in the intoxicating rush of their affair, remained oblivious to the growing suspicions around them. They continued their secret meetings, each one a little more daring than the last, convinced that their careful planning and discreet behavior had kept their relationship hidden. But as Halloween approached, bringing with it the promise of masquerades and secrets, the truth was creeping ever closer to the surface. The stage was set for a confrontation that would shatter the peaceful facade of the community and forever change the lives of everyone involved. The night of October 30th, 2018, began like any other in the Reeves household. Mark had announced over dinner that he would be working late. Anna and Jake exchanged subtle glances, their pulses quickening at the prospect of an unexpected opportunity to be alone. As Mark's car pulled out of the driveway, Anna felt the familiar mix of excitement and guilt wash over her. She waited a prudent 30 minutes before making her way to the pool house, where Jake was waiting. passionate embrace was tinged with a sense of desperation. Both were acutely aware that their time together might be running out unknown to them. Mark had not gone to the office. Acting on his growing suspicions, he had driven around the block and parked his car out of sight, then stealthily made his way back to the house. As he crept through the darkened garden, the glow from the pool house windows caught his attention. Moving closer, he heard muffled voices and laughter sounds that stopped him cold in his tracks through a gap in the curtains. Mark saw a scene that shattered his world. Anna and Jake were entwined on the small bed, their naked bodies illuminated by candlelight. The intimacy of their embrace left no doubt about the nature of their relationship. For a moment, Mark stood, frozen, his mind struggling to process the betrayal unfolding before his eyes. Then a red hue of rage descended. He burst through the pool house door, his sudden appearance causing Anna to scream and Jake to leap to his feet. What followed was a blur of violence and shouted accusations. Mark lunged at Jake, his fist connecting with his son's face and body. Anna tried to intervene, only to be shoved aside with such force that she crashed into a glass table, shards cutting into her skin. The commotion drew the attention of a neighbor who called 911, reporting sounds of a violent altercation. But by the time police sirens could be heard in the distance, the confrontation had already reached its tragic climax. In the chaotic struggle, Mark's hand had closed around a heavy ashtray. Fly with rage, he swung it at Jake, the impact producing a sickening crack. As it connected with his son's skull, Jake crumpled to the floor, blood pooling rapidly around his head. The sight of Jake's still form seemed to snap Mark out of his frenzy. He staggered backward, the bloody ashtray slipping from his grasp. Anna, ignoring her own injuries, rushed to Jake's side, desperately trying to stem the flow of blood. It was at this moment that Mark made a fateful decision. His life, as he knew it, was over. His marriage a sham, his son gravely injured by his own hand. In a final desperate act, he reached for the handgun he kept hidden in his study. Anna, hearing Mark's movements, looked up just in time to see him raise the gun. Her scream was drowned out by two deafening shots. Mark's body jerked as the bullets tore through him, and he collapsed to the floor. Seconds later, the first police officers burst into the house following the trail of destruction to the pool house. They were met with a scene of carnage: Mark dead on the floor, Jake unconscious and critically injured, and Anna covered in blood, cradling Jake's head in her lap. As paramedics rushed in, and the house became a flurry of activity, Detective Rowan Thorne arrived on the scene. Looking at the devastation before him, he knew that unraveling the events of this night would be one of the most challenging cases of his career. Little did he know that the truth would be even more complex and heartbreaking than this blood-soaked scene suggested. In the days following the tragedy at the Felton residence, the town was gripped by shock and morbid fascination. Yellow crime scene tape cordoned off the property as a stream of investigators came and went, piecing together the events of that fateful night. Detective Rowan Thorne took charge of the investigation, his normally impassive face betraying the gravity of the situation. His first order of business was to interview Anna, the only conscious witness to the crime. She sat in the sterile interrogation room at the police station, her haunted eyes rimmed with dark circles. Anna's account of the night's events was disjointed and emotional. She admitted to the affair with Jake, describing how their relationship had developed over the summer. She recounted Mark's violent reaction upon discovering them together, and his subsequent suicide. Throughout her statement, Anna's concerns seemed focused primarily on Jake's condition, barely acknowledging her husband's death. Meanwhile, forensic teams combed through the Reeves home, collecting evidence that would help corroborate or contradict Anna's story. They discovered a journal in Mark's study, its final entries revealing his growing suspicions and the toll they had taken on his mental state. Emails and text messages retrieved from the family's devices painted a picture of a household fraught with tension and secret communications. Jake, meanwhile, lay in a coma in the intensive care unit of the General Hospital. Doctors were uncertain if he would ever regain consciousness, and if he did, what information he might be able to provide about the night's events. Anna spent every possible moment by his bedside, her vigil raising eyebrows among the hospital staff and fueling further gossip in town. As the investigation progressed, Detective Thorne found himself grappling with inconsistencies in the evidence. The angle of Mark's gunshot wounds didn't quite match Anna's description of events. Trace evidence suggested that the crime scene might have been altered before police arrived. Then there was the matter of Mark's life insurance policy, a multi-million-dollar payout that named Anna as the sole beneficiary. With each new piece of evidence, the detective felt he was moving further from the truth rather than closer to it. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this story. Darker secrets yet to be uncovered beneath the surface of this seemingly perfect family and their picturesque small-town life. As weeks passed, Detective Thorne's investigation took unexpected turns, revealing layers of deception that went far beyond a simple affair. Each new discovery painted a more complex picture of the Reeves family dynamics and the events leading up to that fatal night. A breakthrough came when Jake finally regained consciousness. His statement, given in halting words between bouts of pain and confusion, differed significantly from Anna's account. Jake spoke of a plan, not just to continue their affair, but to eliminate Mark permanently. According to Jake, it was Anna who had suggested that they murder her husband, staging it as a suicide to claim the life insurance money and start a new life together. This revelation sent shockwaves through the investigation team. Thorne ordered a more thorough forensic analysis of the crime scene, which uncovered trace amounts of a powerful sedative in a glass found in Mark's study. Toxicology reports on Mark's body rushed through the lab confirmed the presence of the same drug in his system. Perhaps most shockingly, Thorne uncovered evidence suggesting that Anna had been planning for a long time, meticulously orchestrating the events that led to the tragic night. The investigation was far from over, but with each new piece of evidence, the detective was inching closer to unraveling the full, disturbing truth behind the Reeves family's devastating fall from grace. Detective Rowan Thorne was struck by a chilling revelation: Mark's involvement in the death of his first wife. What had been ruled an accidental overdose years ago now appeared suspiciously like a carefully orchestrated murder. The detective's theory began to take shape. Anna, trapped in an abusive marriage and aware of Mark's criminal activities, had seduced Jake not out of passion, but as part of a calculated plan. She had manipulated the young man's resentment towards his father, convincing him that eliminating Mark was not just for their love, but an act of long overdue justice. Their plan, it seemed, had been to drug Mark and stage his suicide. But something had gone wrong. Whether Mark had realized what was happening or the dosage had been miscalculated, he had awakened and confronted them earlier than expected. The ensuing chaos had led to the violent confrontation and Mark's death, not by his own hand, but likely shot by Anna in what she would claim was self-defense. As Thorne pieced together this narrative, he was struck by the tragedy of it all. Jake, a young man damaged by years of paternal neglect and abuse, had been drawn into a web of manipulation by the very woman he thought would save him. Anna, while undoubtedly a victim of Mark's cruelty, had chosen a path of deception and violence that spiraled out of control. The truth, Thorne realized, was far more complex than any simple narrative of a love affair gone wrong. It was a story of generational trauma, abuse of power, and the desperate lengths people will go to escape their circumstances. A story that would forever change the way Fairview viewed the family it had once admired. Prosecutors painted a damning picture of Anna as a cold, calculating woman who had seduced her teenage stepson and manipulated him into helping her murder her husband. They presented evidence of the affair, the life insurance policy, and the inconsistencies in Anna's initial statements to the police. The defense, however, argued that Anna was a victim of years of abuse at Mark's hands. They portrayed her actions as desperate attempts to escape a controlling, violent husband. Jake's testimony became a central point of contention, with the defense claiming his memory was unreliable due to his head injury and the trauma of the eve. Expert witnesses were called to testify about the effects of long-term abuse. the reliability of memories formed during traumatic events, and the complex financial dealings of Mark's company. Each day brought new revelations and twists, keeping the town on edge. The most dramatic moment came when Anna herself took the stand. Her testimony was a mix of tearful remorse and steely determination. She admitted to the affair with Jake, but insisted that Mark's death had been unplanned, a result of his violent attack on them. Her performance was compelling, leaving many in the courtroom and those watching the televised proceedings unsure of what to believe. Anna, who had maintained her composure throughout the trial, finally crumbled as the judge sentenced her to life in prison without the possibility of parole, citing the premeditated nature of the crime and the manipulation of her stepson. The spectators filed out, their animated discussions a mix of vindication and disbelief. In the end, the true legacy of the Reeves tragedy was not in its salacious details or courtroom drama, but in the quiet reflections it prompted in countless homes. It forced a reckoning with the complexities of human nature, the insidious nature of abuse, and the devastating consequences of choices made in desperation.